Hello, everybody. I'm going to talk about music publishing, part one. This covers chapters 15 through 18 of the Donald Passman book. First of all, we need to define copyright. What is the definition of copyright? It's a limited duration monopoly. In understanding copyright history in the US, what is copyrightable? Original works of sufficient materiality. When does something become copyrighted? It becomes copyrighted as soon as you make a tangible copy. You don't have a copyright if it's just in your brain. You have to make a recording, or you have to write out the music on staff paper, or you have to print out your finale or Sibelius or whatever notation program you're using. And once you have something in tangible form, you have a copyright, technically. Do you need to register it in Washington, D.C. in the Copyright Office? No, you don't. Here are the 6 rights of copyright. You have the right to reproduce the work, in other words, make a copy of it. You can distribute copies of the work, sell it, get it out to the public. You can perform the work publicly. In other words, if someone else performs your work publicly, you need to be compensated for that because you control the public performance right. You can create derivative works. Once again, someone can make an arrangement, but they would need the permission of the copyright owner in order to do that. You control the right to make derivative works, and that includes even doing things in different languages. You have the right to display the work publicly, and in the case of sound recordings, to perform the copyrighted work publicly by means of a digital audio transmission. That's very important, digital audio transmission. There are some exceptions to the copyright monopoly and compulsory licenses. Cable television rebroadcasts, in other words, they need a license, but it's compulsory, meaning that it cannot be denied. You must give permission to do that. They have to get a license and pay for it, but you can't deny that license. Public broadcasting, copyrighted music can be performed on public broadcasting stations. They do have to pay for it, usually at a reduced rate, but the license cannot be denied. Jukeboxes, we'll talk about how they used to be considered a toy, but in the 76 Copyright Act, there are something that actually licenses, that performs music and needs to pay a license for that. Digital performance of records, and also phonorecords and digital downloads of non-dramatic music compositions. We're going to talk about what dramatic works are related to that. Okay, dramatic works. What is a dramatic work? It includes plays, screenplays, scripts, choreographic notation, choreographic shows and scenarios from film, but not the film itself. You know, opera, musicals, plays, all that kind of stuff are considered not dramatic works, and there's a whole set of rights related to dramatic works, which are going to be taught later, known as grand rights. Any work that is intended to be performed dramatically is a dramatic work. Okay, let's go back to compulsory licenses. Compulsory meaning you do need a license, but they cannot be denied if someone wants to secure a license. So the copyright owner must license to anyone who wants to use it in a phonorecord. Compulsory license do not apply to all these rights of copyright, but in the case of phonorecords, it does apply there. And the term that is used related to this are mechanical royalties. Why is it called a mechanical royalty? It refers to payments for devices serving to mechanically reproduce sound. Do devices still reproduce sound mechanically? No, not since the 1940s. When did this first appear in copyright law? In the 1909 Copyright Act. So let's talk about compulsory mechanical license. What section of the copyright law does this come under? It comes under section 115 of the copyright law. And what it means is that once a song has been recorded and released to the public, must be recorded and released to the public, The copyright owner must license it to anyone who wants to use it in a phonorecord as defined in the Copyright Act for a specific payment established by law. Now we're going to talk about some changes with the Music Modernization Act where some of these conditions are not as applicable. But in terms of a phonorecord, once it's been recorded and released to the public, a license must be granted if requested. In other words, anybody who wants to do a cover starting from the second recording on can needs to get a license to do that. You can release your own Beatles album yourself because all those songs have been recorded and released. You do have to pay a mechanical license. You have to secure a mechanical license and pay mechanical royalties to use those Beatles songs on your cover album, but they cannot be denied. End of part 1.